Hello, race fans. Welcome back to another episode of the NASCAR Show here on The Grueling Truth, where legends speak. We're here to talk about the All-Star race. I'm Alex Gray along here with Steve Risley, and we have up-and-coming racer Michael Klein back in here with us as well. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Michael.
Yep.
Michael, it wasn't my idea. You know, it was Alex's idea to have you back on. I voted against it, but since Alex controls 50.1% of the show, you're back on by his good graces.
Good.
Yeah, no problem.
I got the ultimate control.
Let's see.
Let's run into the All-Star race now. To me, this was probably, even the Open alone as well, probably one of the best All-Star events that I've ever witnessed, especially with the radiator ducts and the new splitter they were testing. Overall, fantastic race. The Open provided some amazing finishes between Stage 1 with Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson, eventually William Byron creeping by and edging out Wallace to win Stage 1. Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez going at it at the end of Stage 2. Bubba Wallace getting into the All-Star race by winning the second stage. And then the third stage was ran away by Kyle Larson, and we had an exciting All-Star race as well. There was tons of passing. You kind of didn't know who would end up winning this event, and it ended up being Kyle Larson. I believe he becomes the fourth driver in history to, I believe, win the Open and go on and advance and win the All-Star race. I know a couple of them. I believe one of them was like Casey Kane, I think, in 2008. Another one was Michael Waltrip way back in 1996. So obviously Kyle Larson has not won in a bit, but this has got to be a momentum booster for that 42 team.
Well, yeah, and actually to build on that, so I think he's the first one to actually win the Open, but he's the fourth driver to transfer out and then win it. Because, there's always been other ways of transferring out. Mm-hmm. Such as, I'm sure Michael Waltrip finished second, I think, and I think he used to be top two. I don't really know exactly how it all used to be. And Casey Kane, when he did it, it was because he won the fan vote.
Right. That's right. Yeah, because for a while it was two drivers, and then they went to one, and then they went back to two drivers, and now they have the stages. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, though. But, so two things to take away here. Kyle Larson, could this be a big turnaround moment for him that he needed? And secondly, Bubba Wallace. There was a lot of talk lately about, the future of Richard Petty Motorsports, whether or not maybe the team wouldn't be around in 2020. A crazy rumor popped up about Petty and Andretti teaming up and fielding Hondas or something, but that was quickly debunked. Just a lot of crazy stuff going on, and obviously Bubba Wallace not only won a stage, he finished fifth in the All-Star race, which was absolutely incredible for him and that team. I really felt like he raced his heart out in that night.
Here's my takeaway from the evening. To me, this is what happens when you put emphasis on winning. Winning the stages meant nothing except you advance to the main event. There's no points, no playoff points, no I can overcome this. It's like win and you're in. And they raced like winning was the most important thing on track, not track position, not finishing in the top 10, not accruing points, not anything like that. That was the number one takeaway for me, which is why I think it was such an exciting afternoon and evening of racing.
Oh, definitely.
All you got to do is get out and win. I mean, you want to, and the great thing was the teams that won, when they won, they didn't have to go back out and stay in the qualifier, the Open, and try and keep advancing. Once they were in, they parked their car in the garage. They started working on the main event. And so I like that part, but I'd like to see NASCAR find some way to get it back to that, to where there is such an emphasis on winning that guys drive hard all the way through. I mean, the pit strategy got different. The tire scenarios got different. It was a lot more of a crapshoot and a gamble. The guys were coming in 2 or 3. Guys were only taking 2 tires to put themselves back in a position that they could win that heat and eliminate the need to keep racing on. So I like that part of it. I was real pleased for Bubba Wallace because I think this shows what it showed Bubba's talent because, again, the emphasis was on winning, not trying to keep the car in one piece because Petty doesn't have the money to rebuild a lot of cars. You know, we got to take care of our equipment. We got to race easy. You know, Bubba's a guy that wants to go win races. He proved, I think, in this event by finishing fifth, by winning a stage, by competing multiple stages, basically, before he finally got one, that he can drive to win. But I think he's just handcuffed by such a financially strapped team that he's told to protect his equipment and try not to wreck things. We don't have, you know, we can't keep building cars for you like Hendrick can, or SHR or JGR or Childress Racing, any of the big Penske and the big guys can. You wreck one, you just build another one. Or there's already 10 built in their shops. You know, Petty doesn't have that luxury. So I was really pleased for Bubba. The aero package, if I look at the finals, there's a Chevy that won, a Ford that finished second, and a Toyota that finished third. And the dispersion of cars placing throughout the event was pretty balanced. So this aero package, in my eyes, got it right for everybody. And it basically, you know, you got Larson, who's a Charger, Harvick, who's a Charger, Busch, who's a Charger, Logano, who's a Charger, Bubba, who's a Charger. He really, Almirola is kind of more of a strategic driver. Dillon's a Charger. Bowman drives like a Charger. Byron's kind of strategic. Truex is a Charger. Keselowski's a Charger. Boyer and Newman are idiots. You know, they're just idiots, thinking they're going to hurt each other by bitch slapping each other in the pits with their helmets on and everything. Rock 'em sock 'em robots. So then you get down to Chase, who's kind of more of a strategic driver, and Jimmy Johnson. But all of your Chargers came up to the front in this mentality because it was a win. It was a winner's mentality. And I think we all, you know, I know, Alex, you and I got off the phone and said, boy, this was the funnest weekend of auto racing I've seen in NASCAR this summer. Followed up by Kansas City, which I thought was the next greatest race behind that. Take aside the restrictor plate races or the spacer plate races now, whatever they're called. But these guys just went at it to win. And NASCAR's got to look at that, find a way to box that up, and put that in the curriculum every week and just reward the teams. Sure, you want to give some points out for stage participation, but I think you need to make it's a windfall if you win one of these things. So I don't have Chase Elliott comfortable finishing second and picking up 9 points, or somebody like Kyle Busch who won't run into that mentality. He races to win all the time, but he's got 10 stage wins. He's like, you know, I'm not going to try and win this. I'm just going to take my 9 points, dial my car back in and come. And he's probably a bad example. But there's other drivers like that out there that, if they force to, will push the effort and try and win, as opposed to just being in second or third and taking 8 or 9 points, the playoff points and things like that. It needs to be like, you know, we double or triple the points for the winner. It's such an advantage that you don't want to finish second. You want to win this stage. You don't want to just place in this stage. You want to win this stage. I think that's what we got. My question for you guys is this aero package, was this an experimentation for the All-Star race, or is it now in play for the rest of the year?
You want to go ahead, Michael?
Sure. So from what I understand, they were just trying to experiment this for the possible implications for the 2021 cars.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not sure if you heard, but they were all talking about, okay, some of the stuff we're going to do for this is going to be on the Gen 7 car. And we saw that with the duct openings in the hood.
Yep.
So as far as I know, they don't plan to use this the rest of the season. I'm not sure if they're going to go back on that.
Well, and they had Mike Helton on Dale Earnhardt's show yesterday, and they addressed this very thing. And Helton leaned to the fact that most of this experimentation was done for the Gen 7 car. But I'm going to tell you, based on the show they put on yesterday, or last weekend, and as fickle as NASCAR is about changing rules, like the qualifying rule, you know, if we're going to go from heat qualifying to single car qualifying, they'll make changes on any given Sunday or Saturday. And I think this is a change. They're going to say, you know what, these aero changes fit these cars. On the 1.5 mile track here, they worked well. They created some monstrous racing. And cars running side by side, aero packages.
Oh, yeah.
You get up and side draft somebody. There were cars sliding all over the place when you started side drafting them. I mean, your automobile becomes a weapon of not mass destruction, but a weapon of how to gain an upper hand by being in the right place at the right time. You saw cars fishtail like crazy when they weren't touched. I mean, there were so many times we thought, oh, he got bumped. And then you go back and show an instant replay, and there's a good 4, 5, 6 inches between bumpers of the two cars. It's just taking the air off the rear spoiler. And also the large spoiler in the openings is giving these cars more maneuverability and more ample opportunity for guys to drive the race car and not let the race car drive them based on where it's allowed to go. So I would hope that NASCAR would take a look at this and go, man, you know, we come off of Kansas City, which is a great race, best 1.5 mile race we've seen probably in 1 to 2 years. A lot of racing, especially to Kansas City, which is like a Chicago-type track, which is kind of a flat 1.5 mile. You see a lot of parading going on in those kinds of tracks, but you didn't see any parading at Kansas City. You saw good hard racing. It carries right over into Charlotte for the All-Star race. They alter the package again, and they get even better racing. And these cars are stable. I mean, that's the problem. They're stable, and it makes drivers a little more brave and you know, brazen. It's like, this car's so stable, I can try things I don't normally would try because I'm going to lose the rear end, or I'm going to plow into the turn. I'm not going to be able to come out of the turn. So many things are going to happen. But these cars are stable. They go, and you know, they hold their track, and that's why you see a Bubba Wallace all of a sudden. He is a talented driver. Alex, you and I said that all along. And it came through. It came through. He got a chance to be equal with equipment-wise, and he proved he was no equal talent-wise. At least I thought so.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I also want to point out something that I kind of like that Charlotte.
No, you can't point anything else out.
Too bad. Too bad. I want to point out that the infield grass is actually now turf. They put that in. Yeah, they put that in when they put it in. And because of that, when people spun out into that turf, nobody got their car torn up because of that splitter. So I mean, don't you believe every track ought to be going to that right about now? I mean, if NASCAR is going to gain control of ISC, don't you think they would mandate that now anywhere where there's a sliding opportunity or opportunity to tear your balance up on your splitter up on the grass? Yeah,
put that turf in because
absolutely.
Go ahead. Yeah,
do it.
It saves maintenance too, with grass and everything. It saves maintenance.
Well, I mean, it kept drivers in the race. It didn't tear up equipment.
Yeah.
There's less painting and rework you got to do on the infield grass.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a win-win-win-win-win. I just don't know how slick that stuff gets in the rain. I don't know if it's worse than grass or better than grass, but you know, knowing about AstroTurf, if they really wanted to get good about it, you could put a sub-air system under that stuff and basically dry that off. Because I know a lot of the turf football stadiums have that sub-air system underneath where it just sucks the water right out from under the AstroTurf. They put sand down under it, and they have the sub-air system, and that's probably dry faster than the track is dried. But I could see things like Indianapolis going to that immediately. Other tracks, Daytona has a big infield like that where cars go sliding like crazy. But anywhere, Pocono, anywhere where you got the opportunity to slide across that grass and tear up your splitter, I thought that was fabulous. So, yeah, that's a good call on that, Alex. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to throw this out there, I took some facility and event management courses, and we actually learned all about that stuff. And that stuff doesn't absorb the water, you know, like natural turf does. And so really that eliminates the chance for saturation, which could also have an impact throughout a race, even if the track isn't wet. So having that kind of system in play would just about eliminate that issue.
Well, I would think two things you'd be able to do to it, too. You probably could take a big wet vacuum and just vacuum the water up. I mean, you literally could probably take one of the vacuum trucks they run and just run it across the AstroTurf or turf, whatever they use, synthetic turf, and probably dry it up, like I said, faster you can dry the track up. And I would guess the heat would dry that stuff out faster than it would dry grass out too, because grass you're going to dry the ground and the grass. Here you're just going to have to dry the plastic grass, and stuff will dry real quick. Like you said, it doesn't absorb the water. So that was that's a move that's almost as good as safer barriers, and could in the long run make as big a contribution to quality of auto racing and the safety of auto racing as the safer barriers do. So I like that at all. So NASCAR's definitely moving in the right direction. See what happens when you get Brian France out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
I guess I won't be getting a Christmas card from Brian France this year.
Probably not.
Not that I got one last year either, but that's okay.
There are other big news that appeared today as well, that ISC, which owns about half the tracks, International Speedway Corporation, NASCAR will buy ISC in a deal that is valued at $2 billion or $45 a share. Some news that came out this morning, reported by Bob Pockris and Adam Stern. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I would certainly say it's probably a good move on NASCAR's part just to gain more control over the schedule, because Steve Phelps has made it very clear that now they want to focus more on what the fans want, because they know that's who's keeping the sport alive. And the issue with that is the fans have issues with the schedule. Even the drivers have issues with the schedule. They couldn't do anything about it because they're locked into these contracts. And since ISC will no longer be an outsider company, even though it was still owned by the same family, that means they wouldn't have to really honor any contracts with them anymore because they own it, so they could do whatever they want with that.
Who owns the track? I mean, other breakdown of ownership. NASCAR outright owns some tracks as NASCAR, the entity. Don't they own like Daytona and Talladega? Does not NASCAR own those tracks, or are they part of ISC?
They're part of ISC. Some of the tracks I think NASCAR actually owns include Iowa, and I think there's a couple others that I can't really pinpoint.
Let's see. Daytona, Homestead, Auto Club, Martinsville, Chicagoland, Darlington, some tracks they own there.
They're owned by NASCAR, correct? Not ISC.
The tracks I just named?
Yeah.
These are ISC tracks, which of course, yeah.
So ISC is a publicly traded company that it's a whole entity, part of the NASCAR family. It's just basically the track ownership arm of NASCAR, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then aren't there still some outside owners like Humpy Wheeler? Doesn't he still own some tracks, or did he cave and sell out to ISC?
Humpy Wheeler?
I don't think Humpy Wheeler was ever an owner. I think he was always just a promoter.
Just a
promoter. If
promoter?
you're talking about Charlotte Motor Speedway, I believe Bruton Smith always owned that one.
Bruton Smith. Okay, Bruton Smith. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got Humpy and Bruton. And then who's the guy, Eddie? Who's the guy that owns Texas?
Eddie Gossage.
Eddie Gossage. Is he's not part of ISC, is he?
That's Speedway Motorsports, and I think he's just the president of that.
Yeah.
So Speedway Motorsports is the other entity that owns tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you have a few tracks that are privately owned too, such as Pocono and Dover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And is Michigan privately owned by the Penske's?
No, that track's owned by ISC now, I believe.
So he sold it to ISC. Okay.
Yep. Michigan acquired that track in 1999.
Yeah, well, there's two schools of thought to NASCAR wrangling these tracks back in. One is, as you said, to gain more control over scheduling, definitely, and be able to control more and cater to sponsors more who may want dates moved around, to, especially if they're looking at regionalizing their sponsorship packages, saying, we're going to have a West Coast sponsor, an East Coast sponsor, a Florida sponsor, a northern sponsor. We're going to package these up more into segments. That would give them more liberty to do those type of package deals and move tracks into a clump of races where they could run them all back to back to back to back. The other side of it is they could also be strengthening the position of NASCAR by saying making NASCAR more attractive to potential third-party buyers or investors who are saying, you not only get the entity of NASCAR, you also get control of the tracks, of the large portion of the tracks as well. So you're going to be able to control your own destiny and shape it how you want to shape NASCAR, if they still are in that business model of looking for a buyer or at least a potential co-investor now in NASCAR. Although I don't see the reason why I think NASCAR is still a profitable venture, is it not? I mean, they're still making money.
Oh, yeah. Like I said before, I think NASCAR is going to be on the rise here in the coming years, going into the 2020s.
Yeah, I think the money's probably – I think the TV dollars are going to dry up a little bit. I don't think that the TV contracts will be as lucrative because they got really silly in the last go-around. And I think you'll see probably some of that come down. But I think they'll make it back up in better sponsorship packages and sponsorship deals, because they were only getting $40 million from Monster Energy. Wasn't that about the going rate, what they were paying?
I think so. It sounds about right. Somewhere between $40 million.
They should be able to sell smaller packages for $10 million and probably do 5 or 6 of those as opposed to one big package for $40 million. So no one organization is putting out that kind of capital. You're getting smaller chunks of capital from more investors or more sponsors, and they should actually see that money go up. So, and I don't think TV money will be hurt that badly, but I think you'll see probably some decline because television viewership is not what it used to be either. I don't know if it's an oversaturation of the sport. And I still think they need to find some ways to get fans back in the stands, but good racing, like what you saw the last 2 weekends of NASCAR racing, are going to put fans back in the stands, in my opinion.
Yeah, I believe I was going to say something. I lost my train of thought. Oh, with the TV, I think the other issue is, plus a lot of people watch it online too. You have Fox Sports Go, NBCS, the NBC Sports app. Obviously, there's so many channels out there now, can't even count them. So I think that's another factor that plays into it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm old school. I just DVR everything and I watch it whenever I want to watch it. But I got to tell you, watching practices gets kind of mundane and boring after a while. And I'm not a fan of the new qualifying format. I liked the heat qualifying better. Before they just gave up on that 100%, I would have liked to have seen trying to find a solution that remedied such that you could keep heat qualifying, because I thought that was more spur of the moment than what the single car qualifying is. It's like every car just goes out and runs its 2 laps, and you can have the pole position changed 5 times in 5 laps under heat qualifying. And yeah, technically you could do it under single car qualifying as well too, but it doesn't happen as fast. And you don't have good guys don't have an opportunity to recoup what they've lost. Maybe they come in, maybe Harvick comes in, he's 0.2 of a second off. He goes back, comes in, puts his car in the garage, comes out and finds 2 more tenths of a second, makes a last ditch effort run with 30 seconds left to go on the clock, and he takes the pole that way, whereas he wouldn't have that opportunity under single car qualifying. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But the way it was mandating itself of cars sitting there on the runway until 30 seconds to go, then everybody trying to dash out at one time, wasn't the right way to do it either. But anyway.
Yeah, and
So all in general, we think that the last 2 races have been a huge success for NASCAR with the aero packages, with some drivers stepping forward, more of an emphasis on racing and winning. Anybody disagree with that, or anybody comments on that?
No disagreements here.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope to see it Sunday. Sunday is probably one of the greatest days in motorsports of all time. Every year, you start off with Monaco. Well, you start with Monaco actually.
Monaco, yeah.
You pick up Monaco at about 5 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. You get through that, and then you get into the Indy 500. which is going to be interesting to see because it's now on NBC. That's the first time, I think, in the history of the broadcast of that show that it's not been on ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll wind up with the World 600, which is an interesting race. Is it still called the World 600 or is it the Coca-Cola 600? I don't even know.
It's just the Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. But that's always an interesting race because you start off in the day, in the heat of the day. You end up racing under the lights at night. And drivers that are running strong at the beginning or running weak at the beginning, a lot of times that just flip-flops right off. I hope at least they stay with the aero packages that they used at Kansas City. At least keep it that close. I realize they're not going to use the same aero package they ran for the All-Star race, although I wish they would. I think it'd be fun, but I think it's a little too much to ask too soon. But hopefully they stay pretty similar to what they did in Kansas City, because I think Kansas City is – I think Charlotte's a little bit faster track, a little higher banks, but still pretty similar racetracks. Yeah? No?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think Charlotte, you can probably get going faster just with the way it's configured.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little more banked, and it doesn't have a little steeper banking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, which always helps. Anything else? Anything else on the All-Star race?
I think that's about everything. If you want to get into Michael's part here.
Do we have to? Can we just, cut that part?
Don't be mean. Come on.
Okay, we won't be mean. What we do, for everybody listening to us, we asked Michael to come on, and Michael's a racer. And you hear all these terms, loose end, tied off, pushing, plowing, pulling, track bar adjustments, spacers, wedges, and we hear that terminology used so flippantly by announcers, drivers, crew chiefs, that I think many of the fans don't really know what that all means and what the cause and effect of that is and what it really does to when you go in and you hear somebody say he's going to take a quarter turn of wedge out. And I'm thinking, okay, they just moved that thing about 3 inches. Can that really affect the handling of a race car? Not knowing what it does when you take a quarter turn of a wedge out. So, Michael, we're going to give you the floor right now and let you just kind of wander through all that and explain the things that you know and what it means to you as a driver when you plant your seat in there and you're telling guys the car's not doing this, it needs to do this, tire pressure adjustments. And we took a half a pound out. A half a pound, a half a pound tire can make that big a difference in a car and how it handles. Why don't you go ahead and explain all that with the help of Alex, because I know nothing about it.
Yeah, and just so you know, I'd like to have you guys just sort of ask me questions while I'm doing this too, because I honestly don't do well with just rambling on and on. So,
okay.
You just throw me some questions.
All right, let's start off with the easy one. What is a track bar? It's the term most thrown around a lot. Up until this year, the drivers had the ability to adjust track bars in their car. They've taken that away from them. What does a track bar do?
Okay, so the track bar basically changes the position of the rear axle in regards to the car. And when you hear people talking about raising it or lowering it, that all has an impact on speed because it's affecting the weight distribution on the car. So, say you want to take a quarter turn out of it. So what that's going to do is that's going to loosen the car up because you're raising it up. And that's changing the weight distribution. It's adding a little bit more to that right side, and it's keeping the car more firmly planted into the turn. I mean, really, that's the best way I could describe it. And, how they change that is on pit stops, they usually have the tire carrier carry the bar they use to turn it, and they, turn it a quarter of a turn. So it's really not as hard as it may sound. I know a lot of these racing terms come off as really scary, but once you really get to know them, it's really simple science.
So is it affecting the axle by moving it up and down or forward and backward in the positioning to the car?
It moves it up and down in relation to the car.
So it makes the car either sit lower to the ground.
Yep.
which means you're likely to have less drag on your spoiler. The lower you get the spoiler to the ground, that means the car is going to be more free. It's going to give you more speed, but it's also going to be less stable, basically.
Yep, that sounds about right, because you don't have as much downforce on the car.
Right.
So
tighten it up and get more control of the car. You'll lose some speed, but you'll get better control of the vehicle by raising the track bar.
That's correct.
There you go. Okay. Alex, what's your question? We'll flip-flopping back and forth here.
All right. I guess one thing I would have to ask is, how would tire pressure play a factor in certain races? If I could ask that.
Well, whenever you're messing with tire pressure, because what that does is it means you're adding air or you're taking air out, and that affects how a tire is going to bite into the turns. So, for example, if you have less air pressure in the tire, that usually means it's going to sag a little bit more into the track. So say you have less air pressure on your right front. Generally, what that's going to do is that's going to create a push in the front of the car, which means the car is going to want to go towards the wall, which you can fix by adding more air to your right front. And the same goes for anywhere else on the car, really. And
how precise can you be with that? Because basically, a lot of times they start these cars off with 12 to 14 to 16 pounds of tire pressure, and they know the heat's going to kick it up to anywhere from 18 to 20 to 24, 26 pounds of tire pressure. Are they just that astute at knowing where to start and knowing how much rise they're going to get? Because I would think track temperature would come into play there. Plowing in, tight off, loose off, your track bar adjustment, because the more heat you put into those tires, the more that tire is going to expand and create a higher tire pressure. And I've driven on my car before on times when I've overinflated the tires, and it's like you feel like you're driving the car when the tire pressure gets too high. You feel like you're just sliding all over the place because the tires almost just become rock hard. And you feel like even in a passenger car, you can somewhat feel whether you've got grip or not with the tire. But then there's times when my wife gets out and looks at the car and says, "Oh, I think my tires are going flat." No, the tire pressure will come up as soon as you get on the interstate and drive it. And now these new cars have these automatic tire pressure sensors, and I'll say, watch your go put up a display for tire pressures, and as you're driving down the 405, you'll see the tire pressure start coming up in the tires. So they can be that precise with tire pressure and say start it at 18 or go down to 17 and a half, and that's going to make that big of a difference by the time they put 50 laps on a set of tires.
Yeah, absolutely. And also when it comes to what you start out with, the series is always going to give you, okay, so this is what you need to be at the start of a race. And so really when it comes to how much you have at the beginning of a race, it's honestly more into what the series wants you to do rather than what the team wants. Teams can kind of mess that a little bit, but not drastically, just because they're going to find that in post-race inspections. But, yeah, you're absolutely right when it comes to how you feel.
Does the track set tire pressure limits, or can you just kind of go wherever you want to go with your tire pressure? You can start as low as you want to or as high as you want to, or do the tracks give you a range so your tire pressures upon a new set coming on has to be within this range, and we check tire pressures that you can't be above this range or below this range on tire pressures? Are you free to play with that as much as you want to?
Just from working in ARCA, no, you don't. There's not even really a range you need to be in. It gives you a set number, and that's what you need to be in for the race.
A set number means you have to run at a certain tire pressure the whole race.
Yeah. And they know it's gonna change during the event. So they always just give you that starting amount you need to be at.
Okay. Terminology like loose in, plowing, tied off, plowing. She's pulling, she's pushing. What does, kind of in a nutshell, what do all those jargons mean? Say you're loose in, you're tied off, you're tied in, you're loose off. You know, she's not getting through turns 1 and 2, but she'll get through 3 and 4. Fine. Where are we going with all that stuff?
Okay, so I'll try to make this as non-complicated as I can. Okay, so whenever you hear a driver say something like loose in, so basically what that means is the car feels like it wants to spin out more on entry of the turn. So whenever you hear a driver mention in, that means entering a turn. If you hear out, it means they're exiting a turn. So that's just those two out of the way right now. And now there's several terms for how the car handles.
Spin out, when you say spin out, you're talking about the rear end coming loose, not the front of the car doing anything. Loose in means you're coming in and your back end swaying all over the place, and that car just wants to that back end wants to kick around the front end and get ahead of the front end because it's just so loose.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, just to go over all the terms that they use for that, a lot of drivers will use the term free for that. A lot of them will use the term loose. And really the correct term is oversteer, just because you're feeling the front of the car move more towards the bottom of the track. So, you know, like I said, there's a bunch of terms for that. Those are the ones I can think of for when the car feels like the back end wants to get out. So if you hear the term like loose out, that usually means on exit of the turn, the back end is wanting to get out. For me, I found that to be the hardest one to handle just because you're putting the throttle down in that section, and so you're even looser than you usually would be, and it's a lot harder to gather the car up as if you were entering the turn when you're slowing down. And now to go into the opposite of that, other drivers will use oversteer, tight, or it's pushing. That means the front of the car is wanting to go up the track, like into the wall. So when that happens, that means you're not getting any forward bite. And, of course, you can change that through, you know, track bar adjustments or even changing tire pressures. Because I know a lot of teams do actually change that stuff, even though the series doesn't let them. There's just a multitude of issues that can be fixed with an easy adjustment. Like if the car is tight in a section of the track, they can add wedge to the back, which kicks the the back end out even more. Sorry, are you guys following me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are just your basic terms for how a car is handling.
Well, now, okay, describe wedge. Wedge is not the piece you put into the spring, is it? That's a stop block or it's a rubber?
No, that's a spring rubber.
Spring rubber, right. Wedge
but the spring...
Now, how's wedge different than a track bar?
Okay, so when you say a wedge adjustment, basically what you're changing is the amount of pressure that you're putting on the spring in the car.
Okay.
And, of course, that has an impact on weight distribution too, because how that works is there's two plates that you put the spring in between, and you can change those, push the spring down, or bring it back up, and all that's going to have an effect on how the car handles. Like if you have it further up, that means there's going to be more room for it to move around, which allows the car to enter a turn better, but it may be looser on exit. Or if you put it down, you're going to be fine on entry, but that thing is going to be tight at the center of the turn.
All right.
Okay, go ahead. Are you done? You done explaining that?
Yeah.
How can a car be tight in the center of turn? Because in the center of turn, you're kind of going straight. It's the straightest you're going in a turn. Am I just thinking of Indy, which has a short chute and a straightaway? I guess actually most tracks are pretty well two big turns, aren't they? Really, except you get to a track like Pocono. Even Pocono's a tri-oval. So so you're when you get into a turn, you're pretty well always turning. So you're transitioning from loose in to a loose off or a tight off because the back end still wants to kick around, but you're setting it up to either want to kick around going in or want to kick around coming out. And then you decide as a driver which of the two you're more comfortable with dealing with on a lap-by-lap basis.
Yeah, that's generally how it goes. Most drivers I know would prefer the car to be a little bit loose just because when it's looser, that usually means you have more speed in the car too, just because it's harder to control. And, yeah, hold on a second. Sorry,
Alex, you got any questions? I mean, don't let me ask all the questions because I got a million of them. Actually, I don't have a million of them, but
I guess another question is sometimes you would see them put like tape or remove tape from the vent or the grill even. And what does that do basically when you do that?
So when teams add tape to the grill of the cars, usually what that means is they're trying to get less airflow into it, because to get as much performance out of the engine as you can, you want it to get as hot as possible without it overheating. Mm-hmm. And so say it's not getting cool enough, but at the same time it doesn't seem fast enough. So what they'll often do is they'll put that tape on it, engine gets hotter, there's more power being pumped into the car, it usually gives it more speed, and it also adds more downforce since you have that area covered up now. Like I said, you can't cover that up too much, though, because if you do, you're going to overheat the engine, and then it's going to blow up in the middle of the race. Mm-hmm. And that's what you see often with cars who get debris on the front, is that they end up overheating, and it takes them out of the race.
Yeah, or sometimes they'll come up, even if, like, a caution is able to come out, they'll come up and ride somebody's bumper, or even the pace car's bumper, to try and get that debris off. I've noticed that a lot in races. You know, like, for example, somebody's a Kroger bag could just wander on and, you know, get stuck on somebody's grill. It's very common. So I know that sometimes they would do that, or, you know, unfortunately they would have to come down pit road and get rid of that.
Well, generally what generally happens is they butt right up to the bumper of the car in front of them. It takes the air off the grill. Yeah. And then the bag just falls off because there's no air holding it on. You've actually taken all the air off the that's why the guys like to get out of line a little bit when they're just doing yellow caution laps. They don't want to sit down behind the car in front of them, ride behind them so much, because it takes the air off and the engine start overheating a bit. That fairly accurate statement?
Yeah, I would say that is. Because if you're not getting that cool air into the engine, it's going to overheat.
Right, and that's always been the concern with F1. When they grid the cars, you know, they go from a standing stop. When the lead cars used to always get frustrated, they still do, when the cars in the back of the pack take their sweet time getting onto the grid and getting into their starting spots, because the F1 cars, if it's Vettel and Hamilton up on the front row, their car is going to get there first, and they're going to sit there for a longer period of time while their engines start to overheat because they're not getting any airflow through it, while the other cars behind them are taking their sweet time gridding up, and they're still getting airflow through their and getting their brakes cooled down as well too. So spring rubbers, what do they do?
So spring rubbers just kind of affect how the spring is able to move during a race. Like if you put it in between, you know, two of the strands on there, those two are not going to be able to push against each other during a race. And so usually what that does is it tightens the rear end up just a little bit, just to get some more control out of the car.
Okay. With the new aero packages that are coming out with a higher spoiler, is a lot of the necessity for these adjustments going to kind of go away, because the bigger spoiler, the bigger openings in the front, are those things going to stabilize the car more and make it kind of naturally more stable, to where you're not going to need to adjust track bars as often or tire pressures as often, because the ground effects is going to do all of that for you and just put the car, keep it stuck to the ground a lot better. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say that probably is. Just because with more air on it, your cars are definitely a lot more stable. And so you're going to see drivers complaining less about the handling. And I think NASCAR even knew this was going to be happening, because this year they actually took the track bar adjusters out of the cockpits, because they had those in the cars for the past few years. And now that the handling is so much more or comparable now between the cars and so much more stable, there's really not that much of a need for it
Yeah.
anymore.
So I thought, Alex, your turn. Come on. I'm asking all the smart questions. I'm asking all the easy questions.
Asking all the easy questions.
Yeah, I'm taking the easy ones.
So I guess I can bring this one up. When I saw this, I got a first-time close look at this when I went to the Kentucky ARCA race in 2017 and watching the cars be inspected, especially that you've worked with ARCA before. How does it work for a car to get properly aligned and, to make sure it meets the specifications for an inspection before and after sessions in a race? Because obviously we've seen guys go to the back and because of some sort of, whether it's an adjustment or just, they fail the inspection and get sent to the back, and then people get ejected and fined. How does that all work?
Well, honestly, I haven't seen too much of that happening in ARCA.
Mm-hmm.
But basically how inspection works in there is you generally have about 3 spaces you need to go through. First one is they're going to inspect the inside of the car just to make sure everything's where it needs to be. Everything is going according to the guidelines ARCA has set forth. And they'll also look in the engine just to make sure everything's legal there, because that's one of the easiest places for a driver or team to mess with to try and get an advantage. And so after that, what we usually do is we go through templates where they measure our wheelbases just to make sure they're all correct. And then they send in a template that basically goes alongside the top of the car just to make sure everything conforms to it and that there isn't anywhere that a team is trying to get an unfair aerodynamic advantage. And they have different ones for each car. They still have them for the Dodges since we even got a couple of those.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they send us to the scales where they also measure the height of the car just to make sure it's okay there. And depending on what the scales will tell us, they'll tell us to go back, put some weight in it, or take some weight out. But there's almost never a penalty associated with that just because it's such an easy fix.
So when a car, and this may not be true in ARCA, but virtually every team has their own templates, right? NASCAR approved templates. Pretty much every team has those templates now, correct?
You mean the teams own them themselves?
Yes.
Honestly, as far as I know, they don't. At least none of the teams I've worked for.
Well, I mean, but in Cup racing?
In Cup racing, I wouldn't be able to tell you that just because I haven't worked there.
Yeah, ARCA, I don't think they do in ARCA. I think that's – but I think in the upper levels of Xfinity and Cup, I think the teams own templates. Now, they don't use the templates that much anymore as much as the lasers, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know. So my question is this. When a team fails inspection, it's because they're trying to cheat the system.
At least just from my experience, it isn't always that way. A lot of times it's just they're struggling to set up the car. Daytona, we had to go through inspection quite a few times before we got it right, just because it was a brand new car. They had never worked with that sort of thing before. And so, I can't really say that it's always a result of a team trying to get an advantage. When you get to the Cup level, though, I would assume that they should have a pretty good idea of where the car needs to be at that point. So I think it's a lot more likely, looking over there, that it could be those teams trying to get that sort of advantage. I can't speak for them all. I'm certainly not accusing anyone of it just because I can't tell for sure. That's just kind of how I see it.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions you have? I mean, anything else we need to know that basically is terminology that's used at the track? Do you think Smokey Unick worried about all this crap? Or do you think he just kept running about 40 extra feet of fuel line running up and down the length of his car so he could carry about 5 more gallons than anybody else? before they finally caught him doing that. You ever hear that story? A.J. Foyt was notorious for doing that. In his IndyCar, he would run like an extra 40 feet of fuel line all around his car in the underbody and everything, and it would hold an extra 5 gallons of gas. And there's wondering how he was getting such good. Yeah, Penske's probably guilty of that. Their cars always do so well fuel mileage-wise when they run like idiots. So, any other questions that we would have for Michael? Anything we missed, Michael? Anything we didn't ask you about?
You know, just to throw this out there, just because this is something I struggled with learning what it was about when I was young, is the draft. Just because I know that's something that you hear a lot in racing that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll just kind of start into that. So the draft is basically when one car will get right behind another car, and that gives them a boost. And just kind of explain how that happens is as the car goes by, you know, it's cutting a hole in the air right behind it. Well, if the car behind it is able to get close enough to the back of it to get into that hole, you know, that's putting less wind resistance on it. It's allowing it to go faster with the driver using less throttle. And a lot of times you'll even see them bumping the guy in front of them. So basically it sort of helps them both. And then once the driver gets to the point where he wants to make the pass, he can just put the pedal to the floor and slingshot right around him. You know, if you hear the term slingshot around in racing, that's what that is when a driver pulls out of the draft to make the pass on the guy there behind.
All right. Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought up the draft. It's something I didn't mean to leave out there.
Yeah, but it seems now they're getting, because of the big spoilers now, they're getting a lot more drafting going on now on the mile and a half and really even the short tracks, because those big spoilers are punching a huge hole in the air, kind of like what was generally always reserved for the super speedway cars, because they were traveling at such a high rate of speed, the hole would be punched bigger. But now with these even slower speeds, is it true to say that these large spoilers are just punching a big hole, and that's where you see the closure rate picking up so big right now, because they're kicking horsepower into these cars to compensate for the drag on the downforce, but these spoilers, as a converse effect, are punching such huge holes that had big horsepower that closure rate is just all of a sudden a lot faster than it's been in the past for a lot of these guys. Is that fair? What's happening?
Yeah. And I mean, that's why you hear so much more about it now, because now the results do rely more on how a driver is able to draft, just with how the closing rate is now and the horsepower taken out of it. So, I mean, now you're almost always going to see drivers who are just slingshotting around. You know, that's what you see whenever you see somebody just shoot to the bottom of the track, which we've been seeing a lot of over these past couple of years on the bigger tracks. So with the new aero package, it just relies so heavily on the draft that drivers really need to know how to master that. And that takes a lot of skill to do it, too, just because you need to know how far behind you are, what speed you need to be at, and when is the right moment to make that move to slingshot right by them.
Very good. Again, I asked one last time. Alex, you got any other questions? I mean, I got the ones answered I wanted to know, which I kind of understood to some degree, but I think Michael does a good job of putting it into clarity a lot better.
As of right now, I don't have any other questions to ask, although I will say that right now, if you get onto NASCAR's Twitter page, they are unveiling the 2020 Hall of Fame class.
I'm watching it right now on NBCSN.
Yep, I got it on Twitter right here on my computer.
Are they about to announce them now, or?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so you want to do like a live reaction video or podcast with that?
Sure, we can react to this.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Or are they doing it right now?
Yeah, they're doing it right now.
Did the smoke get in?
No, I'm trying to. I had the volume off because I obviously don't want it to.
Edsel Ford got in. Great.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this out there. Red Vote has needed to be in here since probably the first class. And so if he doesn't get in here, I'm going to be so upset about that. No one understands exactly what he did to help get the sport to where it was. I mean, he was the original mechanic. Like, he's the original.
Who are you talking about?
Master of the Garage. Red Vote.
Who are you talking about?
Edsel Ford II, the 2020 Landmark Award winner.
And that's all they've announced so far, right?
Yep.
Correct. Yep, Steve Phelps is on the stage. I'm keeping my volume on my laptop a little low. There's Mike Helton coming on the stage.
We can be doing this forever.
Yeah, I think mine's a little behind. It's still just showing the guys in the NBC room talking.
That's probably because I'm watching the Twitter stream. That's probably why it's a little different.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got them both on. Oh, here we go.
Our first inductee, characters in our sport, not just currently, but in all time. Tony Stewart.
Tony Stewart, there you go.
Tony Stewart.
Tony Stewart?
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to... Let me get the Twitter feed on here.
Why don't they just announce the name and then go back and show all the videos? Now you're going to get 5-minute videos.
Oh, well. Obviously, Tony Stewart, especially for Michael and I growing up, watching him and what he's been capable of doing from his days in open wheel to later on in NASCAR, winning 3 championships. 2005 Brickyard 400, I was there, saw him win that race. And, of course, the magical run he made in 2011 for the championship, and all the way to that final win at Sonoma in 2016. It's been really fun watching Tony race. A character on and off the track, and a guy who's really been fun to watch. So, congratulations to Tony.
I mean, growing up, I was always a huge Tony Stewart fan just because it was so awesome to see a guy who could do that much with so many different cars.
Oh, yeah. I felt like he could pretty much drive anything. And then, of course, now he's a successful car owner as well, even when he drove for pretty much himself. And then and even today, he's certainly an iconic figure in racing.
Well, he couldn't drive his Ford or his Chevy Silverado pickup truck in Columbus because I think he holds the record for most speeding tickets ever issued to a NASCAR driver.
I did not know that.
Driving around in Rushville and Columbus.
Yeah, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I had a good feeling Tony Stewart would get introduced.
Here we go, number 2.
All right.
Coach Joe Gibbs.
Joe Gibbs.
Joe Gibbs.
Joe Gibbs.
What do you know? Stewart and Gibbs. Interesting.
All right, you said this is going on Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm watching on Twitter.
All right, whose is it on?
I've got it on the NASCAR Hall of Fame Twitter page.
I got it on the NASCAR Twitter page.
Yeah. I think they're all just showing. It's not on TV yet. They're actually falling behind on TV.
No, they're doing it. They're just not showing the video. They're just showing.
Well, they're just announcing Tony Stewart right now on TV. Oh, Joe Gibbs. There's Joe Gibbs. All right.
Joe Gibbs, obviously also known for being a football coach of the Washington Redskins. A lot of success.
Joe Gibbs coached football? He didn't coach football.
That's why he's the coach. But obviously I know him well more for being an incredible owner in NASCAR, just finding so much success going back to Dale Jarrett in the 18, the 1993 Daytona 500, Bobby Labonte, and then Tony Stewart, Denny Hamlin. Obviously, this means a lot, especially after losing his son, J.D., at the start of the year. So, huge congrats to Joe Gibbs. I think he's well-deserved as well.
I think the thing was,
incredible.
too.
I'm sorry.
at some point, a couple of years into his career as a NASCAR owner, a couple of football teams tried to lure him back into the NFL. And, he said no. His home was NASCAR. They wanted no part of football anymore. I mean, he didn't speak down on football. He just said that his life and home was NASCAR. That's what he wanted to do was.
He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame too.
Pardon?
Yeah, I didn't know he was in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So
there we go.
I guess 3. That gives him. Yeah, so I guess that gives him the honor of. All right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
One of the greatest mechanics, championships, victory lanes, great drivers, great stewardship. But he was also a great friend of Bill France Jr. and an ear that he could call and ask him for what actually was really going on in the garage area. Waddell Wilson.
Waddell Wilson, all right.
Is Red Farmer in yet?
Waddell Wilson.
Yeah, you guys are a little ahead of me, but that's okay. Again, congrats to him as well. I think he's well deserved as well.
So that's 3. Well, they put 5 in every year now.
Yep.
See, what's your thought process on that? I don't. There's years when there's more than 5 that deserve to go in, and there's years when less than 5 deserve to go in. Does it make sense just to automatically put 5 in every year?
I mean, I believe there's also the rule of, I think after 3 years of retirement, a driver is eligible, and also that this Hall of Fame only opened up back in 2010, so it's still relatively young and new.
Yeah,
and obviously,
but I mean,
like
when do they get to the point where Bobby Labonte goes in? Because there's maybe nobody that year, 3 years out retirement-wise, where whether Bobby Labonte is worthy of a Hall of Fame status, remains to be seen.
Yeah, there's a lot of names to me that are fitting, and I'm pretty sure there's one big name for 2021, and his name involves Earnhardt Jr. And I know we had this discussion.
Now,
we had different thoughts on this.
I know. Is he worthy of the Hall of Fame based on his career? He's got what? 20? Does he have 40 wins?
He has, I believe, 26 wins, 2 Daytona 500s.
No championships. He's got Xfinity championships. Is he worth? I mean, other than the fact that his name is Earnhardt, is he worthy of a Hall of Fame status?
I think he will get in for other reasons.
Sure he's going to get in.
Yeah, his popularity, his ambassadorship to the sport, his success as an Xfinity car owner.
Yeah, just saying. I think he is.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy Baker's in.
Buddy Baker?
Buddy Baker made it.
Buddy
When
Baker.
they said hard charge, when they said hard charge and likes to go fast, I thought for sure that was Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
I just want to go fast.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah, next announcement they make, I'm just going to have to move the phone away just so I hear it, because I think you guys are a little bit ahead of me.
Oh, well, just go to. Well, like I said, I'm on the just NASCAR Hall of Fame sites where I'm at.
Oh, I'm just on NASCAR.
Of course, you all people in Kentucky. Remember, I live in L.A. We get internet faster out here than you guys do in Kentucky.
Makes sense. Yeah. Also, going back to Joe Gibbs, fun fact: there have been a lot of football figures and other athletes that have tried to start up NASCAR teams, especially in the 90s and early 2000s.
Dan Marino. I think Dan Marino bought part of Bill Elliott's team back when he drove his own car.
Here we go.
Number 5.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's get to number 5.
Now joins his brother in the Hall of Fame, Bobby Labonte.
Bobby Labonte got in.
Well, there you go. We were just talking about that.
There you go. I'm just talking about that.
Well,
that's
good for him.
a stretch to me.
Bobby.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him.
I
mean, didn't Terrell Owens, didn't T.O. try to own part of a team, or was that Randy Moss? Randy Moss tried to own part of a team.
Yeah, Randy Moss did.
Yeah, Randy Moss did, yeah.
Yeah, he ran a.
And then Doherty still owns part of JTG or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Brad
yeah, he's still he's still a majority owner, I think.
Yeah, he's done pretty well.
Here's a fun story that almost happened. In 1998, there was a plan for the ARCA driver was Tim Steele, and there was a plan to put him in the Cup Series with a team that was going to be ran by Bud Moore, his dad Harold, and Brett Favre. And the team was going to have sponsorship from Nike and Sony. Unfortunately, 10 days away from signing the contract in late 1997, Tim still had a really bad test crash at Atlanta, getting several head injuries, and the deal never happened. But it also makes you think, what if that could have happened, especially having like Nike and Sony in NASCAR?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Nike would have been big. I'm surprised Nike didn't ever make a bigger effort to get into it than they did.
There were a lot of
Nike
rumors.
Sponsoring car.
Yeah, there were a lot of rumors.
But I just don't know how much equipment there was. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You know, Chase Authentics owns a lot of the Nike branding or the NASCAR branding. And I don't know if Nike, that was a big enough market for Nike. I mean, there was talk of that had it not been for Tiger, Nike probably would have never really gotten into golf to that great a degree. They were in dabbling with Seve Ballesteros. He was one of their first guys, and there was some trickling in the golf market. But when Tiger came out, that's when Nike exploded in the golf world, making clubs and shoes and everything full board. To where Nike's probably the biggest entity, single clothing entity in NASCAR golf right now. So you've got your 5 drivers picked. No real surprises. Labonte, he's kind of in that Earnhardt mold. He's going to get in based on his name and what he did. He's at 21 wins. He does have a championship, which either Mark Martin had a championship, but Martin won, I think, like 40 Cup races, and he won like 60 or 70 or 50-something Xfinity races. He was the all-time leader in Xfinity until Busch passed him and took over that dominance there in the Xfinity series. So is Smokey Yunick, has he made the Hall of Fame? Has he been put in?
Oh, he hasn't even been nominated.
He hasn't even been nominated? You know, there's a guy who was an innovator. Holloman Moody, are they in?
I think they're both nominated, but I don't think either of them are in.
Them got in, yeah. Yeah.
And
it's going to be
no
interesting
red
to see
vote
next year. You what?
Yeah, and still no red vote. You know, I'm not a big fan of that.
Of what?
Of red vote. He's still not in.
Oh, red vote, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of my friends just told me that that he wanted Red Farmer or Herschel McGriff to get in.
I thought Red Farmer was just part of the Alabama gang. I don't know. Was he ever that accomplished of a driver? Or was he just part of that group of guys, the Allisons and
within the NASCAR Weekly Series? Yeah, he was pretty accomplished within the NASCAR Weekly Series, and he's actually got a couple of Sportsman Championships, which, that's now the Xfinity Series. And, I mean, I know I'm biased because I actually know Red, so I did kind of want him in. But
I thought that he was certainly somebody who forged the sport in its earlier day, along with like a Yunick or a Holloman and Moody, who built the cars. I think Andretti won in the Holloman Moody car, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he won. His lone win was in the Holloman Moody car. I think Foyt drove for Holloman Moody when he came down, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but they were a dominant team up against the Petties in the time when they were racing. And then the Wood brothers, they got one Wood brother in, but yet the other one's not in yet. So there's still work to be done to get the right guys in there. But so I think that basically should wrap us up. I think, don't you guys think we got the 5 names in? You're going to see it plastered all over NASCAR news from here on out. So before we wind down, why don't we make our picks for this weekend for the NASCAR racing? All 3 of us going to get in? Michael, are you smart enough to make an informed pick, or are you just another driver?
Okay, so I remember a few months ago I was on a podcast, and I made the correct pick about Logano winning at Vegas.
Yeah.
So hopefully this carries over. I'm going to say Bowman.
Yeah.
You know, he's shown a lot of strength lately, so I think it's really just a matter of time before he breaks through, and I could definitely see him doing it this week. This race is known for producing some unexpected winners, so, you know, certainly wouldn't be surprised to see him do it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
I'll go second. I'll go second, Alex, so you can be the genius that you are and go third. How's that?
All right.
Because we want you to feel good about yourself. I'm going to go with my dark horse is Chase Elliott still, although I don't think the Chevys are going to be strong enough for the whole course to be able to. I think they found part of their problems, but to sit there and have to transition through a day race to a night race, I don't think Chevys have quite gotten it there yet, which would put a damper on Bowman for me. I think Bowman will win here real quickly. I just think the transition of this race and making that move from running in the hot afternoon sun to a cool track that changes its character very much into the nighttime portion of that. I think you need a little bit more established handling car. So, but I'll go with Chase Elliott still because I still think he's the best Chevy consistently out there. And I saw the last power rankings. They actually had Chase Elliott, the 9 cars, number 1 in the power rankings, which I thought was a little far-fetched, although he's been finishing everywhere. But I'm going to go – I still think no SHR cars won yet this year. They are long overdue. This is a track that's a grinding race, and I don't think there's a better grinder out right there right now than Kevin Harvick. You know, the Fords are solid top to bottom. They adjust well. They've got a lot of history with those cars. And Harvick can just grind you into the ground. And, you know, that's an endurance race, and I like Kevin. So I'm going to go with Harvick, and Chase Elliott is my dark horse.
All righty.
All right.
I guess it's my turn now. So if I were to pick who I think could win this race, I'm going to have to go with Alex Bowman as well. The 3 straight second-place finishes, as Michael said, it can produce some surprising winners depending how the race unfolds. I think we could see that 88 get in the victory lane for the first time with Alex Bowman.
Okay.
And
you don't have a dark horse?
Oh, well, if I had a dark horse winner, oh man, I'm not 100% certain on who I would pick. If I were to have a second pick, I would actually go with Kevin Harvick.
Go with who?
Harvick.
Harvick, yeah.
Long overdue.
Yeah, and Mike, did you want to make a dark horse pick? I don't think you did you?
No, I didn't. You know what? Just because he's kind of been slowly creeping his way toward the front this year, I'm going to say Suarez.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because of Stewart Haas cars showing strength.
Yeah, Stewart Haas car, definitely. Yeah. The other one I think you got to watch for, too, in a race like this is Truex.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Truex is a guy who's done well at this track. He's in good equipment, and he knows how to manage his car well. So he's just another guy that I was really up between Harvick and Truex. But I think it's just stewing on Harvick that he has not won yet. So I'm going to stick with him until he finally ekes one out, because he does not like not having a W on his car. That's gnawing at him. And again, I like Bowman a lot. I just think it's the wrong race. I'm not sure the Chevys are up to the task for 600 miles. All right, that's it. We come back on next week.
Yeah, we can do that.
Michael just becoming a regular. Are we going to have him on now because he made picks?
I mean, hey, if he's interested, if he ever wants to come on again, he's certainly welcome.
Yeah,
hey, Michael,
absolutely.
I'll tell you what, we'll pay you twice what I'm getting paid.
All right. What is that, 0?
There you go.
Yep.
See, living proof that drivers can be smart, just like engineers.
All right.
Yeah, it is a smart person's sport, regardless of what people will tell you.
There you go. If you listen to Goodpaster, he doesn't think that race car drivers are athletes, and I think Goodpaster's an idiot. So.
Who?
Oh. Yeah, exactly. He does not think race drivers are athletes. I think he's nuts.
All right.
So with that,
go ahead.
why don't you take us out of here, Alex, and wrap it up?
All right, let's get on out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's special episode of the NASCAR Show here on The Grueling Truth. I want to congratulate all that were voted into the 2020 class of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And once again, big day of racing coming up this coming Sunday. Thank you guys for listening. From Michael Klein, Steve Risley, and myself, Alex Gray, signing off.